More than 2 out of 3 Americans claim Social Security before they legally have to. Not because they need the money, not because their health is failing, because they're scared. Scared the program will run out of money. Scared they'll die before they break even. Scared of leaving money on the table. And that fear, that one specific fear, costs the average American household somewhere between $150,000 and $300,000 in lifetime income. But here's the part nobody tells you. The Social Security Administration is legally prohibited from giving you personalized advice on when to claim. Their own employees cannot tell you what to do. You are expected to make the single largest income decision of your retirement, an irreversible, permanent decision with no professional guidance, using a government website that has a disclaimer at the bottom saying the tool should not be used for financial planning purposes. That's not me being conspiratorial. That is the disclaimer on the website from the government that runs the program. So in this video, I'm going to show you the exact mechanism by which this system systematically extracts money from well-intentioned retirees, why the obvious fix, just wait until 70 misses 2 layers of the actual problem, and what the people who actually maximize their lifetime Social Security income do differently. 3 layers, 1 permanent trap, and a mathematical case that will change how you think about every retirement decision you're about to make. By the way, I built a free early retirement calculator because most online ones are mathematically wrong. They don't account for survivor benefits or provisional income thresholds. It uses BlackRock and Vanguard modeling logic to expose the real weak points in your retirement plan. I only ask for your email so I can send you the report. I don't store any of your financial data. Link is in the description. Now let me introduce you to the penalty box. In hockey, when a player commits a foul, they sit in a small glass box for 2 minutes. They can't play. Their team is short-handed. The clock runs. But when the 2 minutes are up, they walk back out and the game continues. Social Security doesn't work like that. When you claim early, you step into the penalty box and you never come out. Every check for the rest of your life is cut. Your cost of living adjustments compound on a smaller base. Your spouse's survivor benefit gets permanently reduced. And if you're still working and earning above a certain threshold, the government actually withholds your checks mid-year while you're collecting them. You're still in the penalty box. You will always be in the penalty box. This is not a recoverable error. This is not, well, I'll make it up later. This is the financial equivalent of tattooing a bad decision on your face at 62, then spending the next 30 years wondering why it doesn't fade. Here's how deep this goes. If you were born in 1960 or later, and that includes almost everyone under age 66 right now, your full retirement age is 67. Claim at 62, 5 years early, and your benefit is permanently reduced by 30%. Not 30% for a few years, not 30% until you hit some kind of adjustment trigger, 30% forever. The average retired worker benefit in early 2026 is roughly $1,950 per month. Claim at 62 and you're walking out with about $1,365. Wait until 70 when the delayed retirement credits max out at 24% above your full retirement age amount, and you're looking at approximately $2,420 per month. That spread, that $1,055 monthly difference over a 20-year retirement is $252,000. And that's before inflation adjustments widen the gap further every single year. But that is not actually the most expensive part of the trap. Not even close. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you why the survivor benefit dimension of this decision is where the real money lives, and why most financial advisors don't run this specific calculation for you. But first, let's talk about why smart, careful people still make this mistake. Because the reason is not what you think. The usual story goes like this. Person retires at 62. They've paid into the system for 40 years. They want their money. They run the break-even calculation, the age at which waiting until 70 would have paid off, and they decide that if they don't live past 81 or 82, claiming early wins. They've done the math. Or so they think. Here is the problem with that logic. Life expectancy at 65 is not 68. It's not even 75. According to the SSA's own actuarial tables, a 65-year-old man today can expect to live to about 83. A 65-year-old woman can expect to live to approximately 85 and a half. Those are averages. And if you've made it to 65, you've already beaten everyone who didn't. Your odds are above average. More than half of 65-year-old couples today will have at least one member who lives past 90. Read that again. Past 90. So the break-even calculation that most people run, the one that says, if I die before 81, early claiming wins, is built on a longevity assumption that is statistically wrong for the majority of the people making it. You're not planning for the average. You're planning for a scenario that has roughly a 30 to 40% probability of being your actual life. But here's the deeper psychological trap. We don't think about our future selves the way we think about our present selves. There's 40 years of behavioral economics research on this. When you imagine yourself at 85, you literally activate different neural circuitry than when you imagine yourself today. The present self is vivid, real, urgent. The future self is abstract, theoretical, other. The present self gets a vote. The 85-year-old self doesn't get a chair at the table. So you sit across from the penalty box, you see the door open, and your brain says, take the smaller check now. Now is real. Now is certain. Now feels like me. And then you step in. The psychological term for this is hyperbolic discounting. The financial term for this is approximately $250,000. Now that's the first layer. But before I walk you through layer 2, I have to tell you about a man I'll call Harold. Harold was a high school history teacher in Ohio, 34 years in the same building, good at his job, respected in his community, careful with money his whole life. He retired at 62, healthy, with a paid-off Buick and a nearly paid-off house. His wife Margaret had worked part-time throughout her career, nursing aide, then office manager, and her own Social Security benefit was going to be minimal. She was planning to take the spousal benefit, which is capped at 50% of Harold's full retirement age amount. Harold claimed Social Security at 62. His benefit was $1,280 a month, about 30% below what he would have received at 67. He thought he'd done the math. He'd looked at break even. He'd run the numbers on a yellow legal pad. He knew what he was doing. What Harold hadn't modeled was what happens to Margaret's income when he's gone. Stay with me, because this next part changes everything. Here is layer 2 of the penalty box. This is the part I want you to hear clearly, because it is the single most expensive mistake in American retirement planning that almost nobody discusses in plain language. When the higher earning spouse in a marriage claims Social Security early, they are not doing this to themselves alone. They are doing it to their spouse. Here's the mechanism. When one spouse dies, the surviving spouse stops receiving 2 Social Security checks and receives one, the larger of the 2. If the higher earner waited until 70 and built up a monthly benefit of $2,400, the survivor receives $2,400 per month for the rest of their life. If the higher earner claimed at 62 and locked in $1,365 per month, the survivor receives $1,365. Not the full retirement age amount, not the delayed benefit, the permanently reduced early claiming benefit, forever. And because women statistically outlive men by approximately 5 years, and because in most baby boomer and Gen X households, the husband is the higher earner. What this practically means is that the husband's early claiming decision permanently reduces his wife's income during the last decade or more of her life. The period when she is most likely to be alone. The period when healthcare costs are rising. The period when she has the fewest options for additional income. Harold died at 78. Margaret survived him by 11 years. She lived on $1,280 per month in Social Security, plus a slowly depleting IRA in a house she eventually sold to cover care costs. Not because Harold was reckless or selfish, because Harold ran the break-even calculation on himself. He never ran it on her. By the way, hit subscribe if you're getting value from this. YouTube's algorithm may never surface my videos to you again if you don't. And genuinely, you do not want to be Harold. The financial research firm United Income, they were acquired by Capital One, but the study is publicly available estimated that 66% of retirees who delay claiming would benefit financially by waiting. Their modeling found that the gap between what American retirees actually receive in lifetime Social Security income versus what they would receive under an optimal claiming strategy is approximately $3.4 trillion in present value terms. $3.4 trillion. Not foregone in taxes, not lost to market crashes, voluntarily walked into the penalty box by people who thought they were doing the smart thing. 3.4 trillion. Sitting there, uncollected because of 62. Now you might be thinking, okay, I get it. I'll wait until 70. My spouse and I will both be strategic, done, problem solved. But I haven't told you about the tax torpedo yet. And the tax torpedo is the reason why wait until 70, while usually the correct strategy can actually create a new problem for people who don't prepare for it years in advance. This is where it gets really interesting. Most people assume Social Security income is tax-free, or mostly tax-free. This is a reasonable assumption because for most of the program's history, it was true. Then, in 1983, Congress quietly made up to 50% of Social Security benefits taxable for higher earners. Then, in 1993, they raised the maximum taxable portion to 85%. Here is the part that should make you furious in a calm, data-driven way. Those income thresholds, the numbers that determine when your Social Security benefits become taxable, have never been indexed for inflation. Not once. They haven't moved since the 80s and early 90s. In 1984, if your combined household income landed at $32,000, you were a solidly middle-class American family, and you probably squeaked below those thresholds. In 2026, $32,000 is below what it costs to maintain a modest one-bedroom in most American cities. The thresholds are frozen in time. The economy is not. And everyone, gradually, silently, has been dragged above those thresholds by 40 years of inflation without a single vote being cast. Here's how the tax torpedo actually works. Your provisional income, the number the IRS uses to determine how much of your Social Security benefit is taxable, is calculated as your adjusted gross income plus any tax-exempt interest you earn plus 50% of your Social Security benefits. If that provisional income number exceeds $25,000 for a single filer, or $32,000 for a married couple, up to 50% of your Social Security becomes taxable income. Push that number above $34,000 single or $44,000 married. And this happens fast. Once you add IRA distributions and up to 85% of your Social Security benefit is taxable. Now here's the trap within the trap. Most people in their mid-60s have significant money sitting in traditional IRAs or 401ks. When they hit 73, the current required minimum distribution age, under the Secure 2.0 Act, they are legally required to start taking distributions from those accounts, whether they need the money or not. Those mandatory distributions count toward provisional income. Add 2 Social Security checks on top of mandatory IRA distributions, and you have now built a machine that manufactures taxable income layered on top of taxable income. A couple with $400,000 in traditional retirement accounts might face mandatory RMDs of roughly $15,000 to $18,000 per year by their mid-70s. Stack 2 Social Security checks on top of that, and suddenly 85% of their benefit is being taxed at their marginal rate. And here is the part that turns the tax torpedo into something truly insidious. For every additional dollar they pull from their IRA, the effective marginal tax rate is not their nominal bracket. It could be functionally double, because each additional dollar of income simultaneously makes more of their Social Security taxable. A dollar in, and you're paying taxes on that dollar, plus making another 85 cents of Social Security taxable. The marginal rate can spike to 30, 32, even 35% in what looks like a 22% bracket. Tax planners have a name for this. They call it the Social Security torpedo zone. I call it the other penalty box, the one you build for yourself with deferred tax vehicles. The SSA website will not tell you about this. Your official Social Security statement lists your projected benefits in nominal pre-tax dollars. It has no way to account for your other income sources, your IRA balance, or your projected RMD schedule. You are expected to figure out the tax interaction yourself from the government that collects the tax. I find this more funny than enraging, honestly. It's the most politely useless disclaimer in the history of federal bureaucracy. Imagine if your doctor sent you home with a pamphlet that said at the bottom, "This pamphlet should not be used to make medical decisions. SSA employee. Can you help me figure out when I should claim?" Response: "Here is an estimate. Please do not use it to decide when to claim. Can you point me to someone who can tell me? Have a wonderful afternoon." The solution to the tax torpedo is not complicated, but it requires you to execute it years before you ever file for Social Security. The strategy is called a Roth conversion ladder. Between the ages of roughly 60 and 63, before you start Medicare Part B, at a premium that's calculated on your income 2 years prior, and before you file for Social Security, you systematically convert money from your traditional IRA into a Roth IRA. You pay the taxes now at a controlled rate in a year when your income is at a deliberate low point. Once the money is in the Roth, it never appears in your provisional income calculation again. Roth accounts have no required minimum distributions. None. Zero. Every dollar you convert in your early 60s is a dollar that will never fire the tax torpedo in your 70s. The window for this is not infinite. It's not even 10 years wide. For most people watching this right now, if you're between 45 and 60, the conversion window is roughly 15 years from today. If you're 63 and haven't started, you're already late. Not too late, but late enough that you need to move faster than you planned. Now, let me introduce you to the man who did this right. He's the person I kept thinking about while I was researching this video. I don't know his name. I pulled the bones of this story from a planning case study, but I'll call him Richard. He and Harold were almost identical on paper. Same age range, same general income bracket, same earnings imbalance with his wife, same traditional IRA balance sitting around $175,000. Same temptation to claim at 62. The difference was that Richard had a fee-only fiduciary, an actual financial planner who charged a flat fee and earned 0 commissions on anything she recommended. She told him 3 things. Spend down your taxable brokerage accounts first, before touching your IRA or Social Security. Do Roth conversions every year between 62 and 67, converting just enough to stay efficiently under the income cliff where your Medicare premiums would spike. And delay Social Security until 70. Those 8 years between 62 and 70, Richard lived off his brokerage account and managed Roth conversions. He paid some taxes, not 0 taxes, controlled taxes at a rate he chose in years where he had leverage. At 70, he filed for Social Security. His benefit was $2,380 per month. His wife filed for her spousal benefit. Their combined household Social Security floor was approximately $3,570 per month, roughly $42,840 per year. An inflation-adjusted, guaranteed income for the rest of their lives, regardless of what markets did. When Richard died at 82, his wife received $2,380 per month. His full delayed benefit, not a permanently cut early claiming benefit, his last gift, extended for as long as she lives. She calls it exactly that, his last gift. That's not luck. That's not some rare financial genius move. That is a decision made at 62, with the right information and a few $100s spent on a planning session that modeled the full picture. You think the problem is claiming too early. The real problem is that almost nobody models this decision as a joint optimization for 2 lives across potentially 30 years of shared and individual survivorship. They model it as, how much do I collect per month, starting when? That is not the same question. And the gap between those 2 questions is worth potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let me now walk you through the 3 layers of the penalty box as a framework, because I want to put concrete numbers on each layer before we go any further. Layer 1 is the benefit reduction itself. Claim at 62 when your full retirement age is 67, and your benefit is permanently 70% of what you would have received at FRA. Wait until 70, and you receive 124% of your FRA benefit. The difference is 54 percentage points of your FRA benefit every month for life. If your FRA benefit is $2,000, you're comparing $1,400 to $2,480. That's $1,080 per month, roughly $12,960 per year. But that gap does not stay constant. Here is the part of layer one that most people don't model. Cost of living adjustments, the annual increases, Social Security applies compound percentage increases on top of your base benefit. A 2.5% COLA on a small base produces a smaller dollar increase than 2.5% on a large base. After 10 years of COLA, the early claimer who started at $1,400 is getting roughly $1,787 per month. The delayed claimer who started at $2,480 is now receiving approximately $3,165. The gap has grown from $1,080 to $1,378 per month. And it keeps growing. You're still in the penalty box. And every year, the box gets a little bigger. Layer two is the survivor benefit penalty. I've already told you Harold's story. Let me put a number on it. If a higher earning spouse delays until 70 with a monthly benefit of $2,480, the surviving spouse receives that full amount for the rest of their life. If that same spouse claimed at 62 with a benefit of $1,400, the survivor gets $1,400 if the survivor lives 15 years after their spouse, which is statistically well within normal range for a woman who was 60 when her husband died. The difference in lifetime survivor income is $1,080 per month times 180 months. That is $194,400, almost $200,000, destroyed by a decision made decades earlier, by a man who thought he was protecting his family. That is layer two of the penalty box. Layer three is the tax torpedo, which I've described. But there is one nuance I want to add here that most people miss entirely. The tax torpedo is actually worse the earlier you claim, for a reason that isn't obvious. If you claim at 62, you have 8 fewer years to run Roth conversions in a low-income window. Every year you're collecting Social Security is a year your provisional income calculation already includes Social Security dollars, making your conversion bandwidth more constrained and the tax math more complicated. Early claiming doesn't prevent Roth conversions. It just makes them less efficient. You're trying to convert IRA money into Roth in a window where the income floor is already elevated. It's a tax trap reinforcing a benefit trap, reinforcing a survivor benefit trap. All three layers stacked from one decision made at 62 in a conversation that probably lasted 20 minutes. Let me give you a realistic case with specific numbers because I think this becomes more useful when it's grounded in an actual scenario. Meet David. He is 61 years old. He lives in Texas. He has a wife named Carla who is 58. David's earned substantially more than Carla over their careers. His projected Social Security benefit at his full retirement age of 67 is $2,200 per month. Carla's projected benefit at her FRA is $800 per month, reflecting her lower and less consistent earnings history. Together, they have approximately $320,000 split between a traditional IRA and a 401k. David is tempted to claim at 62. He has run the math, or at least part of it. Between 62 and 67, he would collect $92,400 in Social Security benefits. That is real money. That helps with the mortgage. That buys him flexibility. He tells himself, if I die before 82, I come out ahead. He has done the break-even calculation. Here is what David has not calculated. If David claims at 62, his monthly benefit is $1,540. If he waits until 70, his benefit is $2,728. The monthly difference is $1,188. David turns 70 today. Over the next 20 years, that monthly difference, compounded with COLA, accumulates to somewhere around $328,000 in additional lifetime income. Not hypothetical, not statistical. That is what the delayed claimer collects that the early claimer does not. And then there's Carla. If Carla outlives David by 10 years, statistically likely, Given she is younger and women's average life expectancy advantage, she would receive David's delayed benefit of $2,728 for those 10 years instead of his early claimed benefit of $1,540. That is $1,188 per month times 120 months, which is $142,560 in additional lifetime income for Carla, flowing from David's single claiming decision. Combined impact of David claiming at 62 versus 70, roughly $470,000 over their combined lifetimes. Using realistic longevity assumptions and current COLA projections, that is before the Tax Torpedo fires. With $320,000 in traditional retirement accounts and mandatory RMDs starting at 73, stacking on top of 2 Social Security checks, David and Carla are well positioned to push 85% of their Social Security into taxable income at a combined marginal rate, somewhere around 22 to 24%, which means the $92,400 David collected from 62 to 67 looks considerably smaller once you net out the additional tax burden it helped generate on the back end. David probably doesn't know any of this, not because he isn't intelligent, because nobody showed him the full picture, and because the system has no structural incentive to show him the full picture. Now, I promised earlier that I'd tell you what the people who maximize their Social Security actually do differently. And it comes down to 4 specific behaviors, not mindset shifts, not vague planning principles, 4 concrete behaviors that separate the optimizers from the Herald scenarios. Behavior 1, they treat Social Security as longevity insurance, not a pension. The mental frame matters because it changes how you run the break-even calculation. You don't evaluate homeowners insurance by asking, but what if my house doesn't burn down? You buy the insurance because the cost of being wrong is catastrophic. A long retirement with a permanently reduced income floor is financially catastrophic. Delayed claiming is the cheapest inflation-adjusted longevity insurance that exists in America today. It is guaranteed by the federal government, indexed to inflation, and tax advantaged relative to the alternatives. Treating it as a pension you want to start collecting as soon as possible is the single most expensive mistake in American retirement. Behavior 2, they optimize for the survivor, not themselves. Every claiming decision gets stress tested against one specific question. What does my spouse receive if I die at 73? Not at 90, not at 85. At 73, which is before the average retirement, that question, answered honestly with real numbers, changes the calculus for most married couples immediately. Behavior 3, they run the Roth conversion ladder aggressively between 60 and 63. This is not optional if you have significant traditional retirement account balances. If you are not converting systematically in your early 60s, you are building the tax torpedo for yourself with both hands. Every year you wait is a year you didn't fire the torpedo at a time and rate of your own choosing. Behavior 4, they know the correction tools that exist for people who claimed early under financial duress. The voluntary suspension option available after full retirement age allows you to pause your benefit and earn delayed retirement credits going forward. It is not as powerful as never claiming early. But if circumstances have changed since you filed, knowing this tool exists is the difference between a permanent mistake and a partially recoverable one. All 4 of these behaviors require one thing most people don't have in the 3 years before they retire. They require a fee-only fiduciary financial planner with specific Social Security optimization experience. Not an insurance agent who earns a commission on annuities. Not the guy at the bank who gives free consultations. Not your brother-in-law who follows CNBC. A fee-only, conflict-free fiduciary who charges you a flat rate and runs the full joint survivor optimization for your specific numbers. The National Association of Personal Financial Advisors has a public database of fee-only fiduciaries. So does the Garrett Planning Network. A thorough Social Security optimization session typically costs somewhere between $300 and $700. Against a $470,000 lifetime income decision, that is not a cost. That is the cheapest insurance premium you will ever pay. Now, let me address the fear that's been sitting in the background of this entire video, because I know it's there. You've heard that the Social Security Trust Fund, specifically the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Fund, is projected to hit depletion around 2033. The SSA's 2024 Trustees Report put the number at 2033 for the OASI fund. That's 7 years away. And when people hear that number, their instinct is, get in now before the music stops. Grab my money before the program can't pay it. This fear is understandable. It's also mathematically backwards. Here is why. When the trust fund hits depletion, benefits don't go to zero. By law, Social Security can only pay what it collects in payroll taxes at that moment. The current projection is that would be roughly 79 cents on the dollar, a 21% across the board cut for everyone. But 21% of a larger base is still larger than 21% of a smaller base. The person who delayed until 70 and receives $2,728 gets cut to $2,155. The person who claimed at 62 and locked in $1,540 gets cut to $1,217. After the cut, the delayed claimer is still receiving $938 more per month. Rushing into the penalty box to escape the trust fund scenario doesn't escape anything. It locks you into a smaller number before the cut, which makes the cut hurt more in absolute dollars because your floor was already lower. And one more data point on this. Congress reformed Social Security before. They did it in 1983, the last time the trust fund faced genuine depletion risk. They raised the payroll tax. They gradually raised the full retirement age. They made benefits partially taxable. It was politically painful, and it happened anyway, because 70 million American voters depend on this program, and no political party has any interest in watching it collapse visibly. The people who rushed to claim in the early 80s to get their money before it runs out spent the next 30 years on a 30% haircut. The fund didn't run out. They're still in the penalty box. You're still in the penalty box. Harold's wife, Margaret, in the last 2 years of her life, told her daughter something that I keep coming back to. She said, "Your father read everything. He knew everything. He just never asked the right questions. He didn't ask what happens to her check when he's gone. He didn't ask about the tax torpedo. He didn't ask about Roth conversions at 62. He optimized for the vivid, present, real version of himself and left the rest of the spreadsheet blank." The 80-year-old Margaret was theoretical. The 62-year-old Harold was real. The right question is not, when should I claim? The right question is, given that one of us will probably live past 85, and given our combined IRA balance and projected RMDs, and given what Roth conversions are available to us between now and 63, what is the joint lifetime income optimization that protects the survivor, minimizes the tax torpedo, and accounts for the compounding COLA gap? And what does that strategy look like in actual monthly dollar terms at every age from today through 90? That is the question. Most people never ask it because nobody told them it exists. And the Social Security Administration will never ask it for you. So here are 3 things you can do right now specific to this problem, calibrated to this exact trap. Number 1, if you are between 45 and 60 and you have significant money in a traditional IRA or 401k, run the provisional income calculation today. Model your projected RMDs at 73 against your projected Social Security benefit. If your combined provisional income at 65 will exceed $44,000 for a married couple, you are already inside the tax torpedo's effective range. Open a Roth conversion model now, not next year, now. Number 2, if you are married and there is an earnings imbalance in your household, one partner earned significantly more over their career, run the survivor benefit calculation before you run anything else. Find the specific monthly dollar amount your spouse would receive if you died at 73. Not at 85, not at 90, at 73. That number should be the anchor of your entire claiming strategy. Number 3, do not use the SSA's online estimator as your primary planning tool. The agency openly states it cannot be used for claiming decisions. Use it as a single data point. Then, Before you make any irreversible claiming decision, hire a fee-only fiduciary for a Social Security optimization session, $300 to $700, against a decision worth potentially $400,000 or more. That is not an expense. That is the most leveraged investment you will ever make. Every day you delay that planning session is a day closer to 62 with less room to maneuver. Harold had years. He burned them on a yellow legal pad with the wrong calculation. Don't be Harold. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. And the most profitable document you will ever read is the footnote at the bottom, the thing everyone skipped.